Welcome to Books vs. Movies, the podcast where I set out to answer the age-old question, is the book really always better than the movie? I'm Yuvia, an actress and book lover based out of New York City, and today I will be talking about The Idea of You by Robinne Lee and its 2024 Amazon adaptation, The Idea of You, starring Anne Hathaway and Nicholas Galitzine. Okay, this is going to be a good episode, I think, because you're going to get opinionated, Yuvia, and I don't know, I feel like people kind of like it when I'm opinionated because that's when I get like the most fiery and passionate and everything, but you know, let's get started because I have a lot of opinions, as I said. So, The Idea of You by Robinne Lee was first published in 2017, and it follows Solène Marchand. Solène is a 39-year-old woman. She's the owner of an art gallery in Los Angeles, and she is also stuck with taking her daughter Isabel to meet her favorite boy band. She's now divorced, and due to the divorce, she's trying to bond with Isabel, or Izzy, as much as she can. So she takes Isabel to meet the British boy band August Moon and ends up making a connection with one of them. Hayes Campbell is very clever, he's very posh, he's very British pop star, and the attraction between the two of them is immediate. However, he is 20 years old. So this starts off as a series of secret hookups, and it ends up developing into a genuine relationship. So throughout this journey of Solène and Hayes getting together, they also have to learn how to navigate each other's worlds. He is a part of a very famous boy band that is selling stadium tours, and she's used to traveling to international art fairs and leading a more quiet lifestyle. And now she has to find ways to even be more secluded in this relationship because everything he does ends up everywhere, all over the media, all over the tabloids, all of that. So when Solène and Hayes' relationship goes viral, she and Izzy, her daughter, become the target of rabid fans, the tabloids, and Solène has to come to terms with how her romantic life has impacted not only her life, but the lives of her loved ones. The 2024 adaptation, The Idea of You, follows Solène, who is a 40-year-old single mom, as she begins an unexpected romance with the 24-year-old Hayes Campbell, who is the lead singer of August Moon, the absolute hottest boy band on the planet. So, as always, there will be spoilers, and I also want to give a little disclaimer because, as you probably gathered from my description of both the book and the film, this does deal with an age gap relationship. And age gap relationships are kind of controversial, I would say. I feel like there's been a lot of discourse around them lately, and I think it's good that we're having this conversation. I think it's good that there's kind of been this reckoning lately among celebrities that I grew up with, looking back and realizing like, whoa, that relationship I was in was not appropriate. So we have Keke Palmer talking about how she was dating someone who was 20 when she was 15, Demi Lovato, who dated Wilder Valderrama when she was 18 and he was 20, no, she was 17 and he was 29. Hilary Duff also dated Joel Madden when she was 16 and he was 26, I believe. So yeah, a lot of the celebrities that I grew up with are kind of having this reckoning and looking back and realizing like that was kind of effed up that I was even in this relationship. Jeanette McCurdy is another one who has also talked about how traumatizing her age gap relationship was. So yeah, I want to say that I don't think all age gap relationships are inherently bad. I think, like all things, it's not black and white. There's shades of gray to it. Age gap relationship conversations require nuance. So yeah, I think it is a little tricky. So I may say things that you may disagree with, or someone may think that I'm being too prudish in what I think about age gap relationships. So yeah, so it's going to be a kind of difficult conversation in that sense, just because there are so many strong, heated opinions about it. As I said, I don't think all age gap relationships are inherently bad. And I think, like, to me, there's a big difference between someone in like having an age gap relationship, but they're well into the younger person is well into their 20s, or yeah, I'm that doesn't mean like I'm pro age gap relationships. It just depends on the relationship. I have several friends who are in age gap relationships or were in age gap relationships, and they were very happy and there was nothing alarming about it. I will side-eye anyone who, once they're maybe past the age of like 30 or 40 or older than that, and they say things like, oh, I don't date people my age because they're too opinionated. That to me just screams you're looking for someone who's young and naive so you can control them. So, and I side-eye anyone also who like doesn't date past a certain age. It's like you could be this person's grandpa at this point or grandma, and you're consistently looking for people this age, and that's alarming. So yeah, I do side-eye situations like that. I also, if someone is a minor, automatic no, like no, will never support that. You should have no reason to be dating a minor. I'm also weary of anyone that is dating someone who falls into the barely legal category, because I don't know. It's like just because someone is legally 18 and legally an adult and you're allowed to date them now, like I still kind of side-eye that. Because it's just like, they're so young. Like, they're so young. They haven't lived any life yet. Like, regardless of what they experienced as teenagers, like what you experience as a teenager, no matter how intense, like, anyway. So yeah, so I do side-eye definitely like those kinds of relationships. But I feel like a lot of the discourse has gotten I think these conversations are definitely important, but I think it has gone a little bit too on the other extreme now, where it's like, if there's a huge age gap relationship, the older person is very clearly just trying to manipulate the younger one, and there's a clear power imbalance. And I don't think that's inherently true, as I said, and I think age has a lot to do with it. Will I side-eye someone who's like in their 60s or 70s and dating someone in their 20s? Yeah, for sure. But if the 20-something-year-old is like past a certain age, like again, like I said, if they're still in like that barely legal category, and to me, barely legal is like 18 to 22. Some people, like I said, that's where people might think I'm being a little too prudish, but I don't know. I still feel like 18 to 22 kind of falls into that barely legal category. 23 is maybe kind of pushing it. 24 and like a 60-year-old is maybe like, okay. But at that point, it's like, I feel like the 24-year-old has enough bearings to know what they're getting themselves into. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But anyway, so yeah, I wanted to throw that out there right from the start, because this book does have a very, very passionate fan base, and it also has a very passionate hater base. And both of those, the haters, I feel like both of those are kind of tied to the age gap relationship of it all. There are some people that genuinely love the book and hate the book despite the relationship, but I feel like the main passion and hate for this book stems solely from the age gap relationship. So just want to throw that out there. So let's go ahead and get into it now that I've had this really long disclaimer. But I just felt like it was important to talk about that, because it is, well, we'll get into it, because the age gap relationship made me uncomfortable in one of the mediums and not uncomfortable in the other one. And it has to do with just a very small change that I will go into. I already said that change already when I described the book and the film, but in case you missed it, I will go into more detail. Okay, so the first major difference is that Izzy in the movie is 17 and not into August Moon. And in the book, she's 13 and very much into August Moon. So Izzy in the film, like she's kind of reached that age, which I think is funny because not saying it's not possible, but I'm thinking to myself at 17 and I was still very much like a rabid boy band lover fan girl. And like my cousin, who's a few years younger, for me it was the Jonas Brothers, for her it was One Direction. And at that age, she was 17, like she was also still very much like a rabid fangirl. So it's just funny that the film decided, one of the confusing things of the film and the book, honestly, is that there's moments in which we know Izzy's age in both, but like she's 17 in the film, but comes across as much older. And I don't think, it might have to do with the actress's portrayal. And I'm not saying she looked too old to be 17, but I think just the way she portrayed her, like she portrayed Izzy in a way that Izzy came off across much more mature. Like I would have guessed she was in her 20s, which kind of made her seem way too old to be Anne Hathaway's daughter. And it is established that Anne Hathaway had Izzy in the film at a much younger age than Solène in the book had Izzy. Like Solène in the film had to have Izzy based on the age when she was in her, she had to have been 22, if I'm not mistaken. And in the book, she was around 27 when she had Izzy. So she is definitely old enough to be the mother of a 17-year-old in the film. But it just like watching it, Orlando and I watched this in February. It's like, we'd never seen this film and it was like I was like on a Valentine's rom-com or just romantic film kick. So this was one of the ones we watched. And both of us, like, were just very confused at first because we're like, wait, does that mean Solène was a teen mom? And then it was like, no, she had her already when she was in her 20s. But like, still, just seeing Izzy next to Solène in the film was just kind of jarring at times because, like I said, it's not that the actress looked too old. She just portrayed her in a way that came off a lot more mature than 17. And I'm not saying there aren't mature 17-year-olds, but, you know, I think about me, I think about my cousins and how we acted at that age. And yeah, but anyway, that's not the point. So it was just, it's just a little jarring. It was just a little jarring in the film. And Izzy is 13 in the book. She's also going through things that I'm just like, she goes to a private school, and in this private school, she's in 8th grade. She starts off in 7th, and we go through spring, summer, fall. So by the time we get to the end of the book, she's in 8th grade. And she's like taking classes. But I was like, mind you, I never went to a rich private school. So like, I'm not surprised if she's learning subjects in 8th grade because of that private school education. But it's also like, I didn't start learning that subject until I was in high school, and she's learning it in 8th grade. And then she has a crush on a senior. So I'm guessing it's like one of those, like maybe it's either like elementary through high school kind of private school, or like middle school through high school private school. But so yeah, so like, I'm not like, the fact that she liked a senior is not alarming. Like I didn't mention that to like raise any red flags, to be clear. It's more so of like, I don't know, it was just very different from what I'm used to, I guess, because I was like, why is she hanging out with seniors as an 8th grader? But then I remember I had a public school education, and you know, we were separated from the seniors in 8th grade, but it doesn't matter. So but yeah, so there was moments in which both Izzy's came across as, Izzy came off across her age, like the way she acted in the book came off very authentically 13, I felt like. But just like some of the things she was experiencing, I was like, would she be experiencing at that age? And then I was like, well, I guess if she goes to private school, maybe she does. So anyway, so yeah, that was just something. But yeah, so Izzy, as I said, is 13 years old in the book, very much like hardcore August Moon fangirl, and Izzy is too cool for school. Oh my gosh, too cool for school when it comes to August Moon at the age of 17. So she's a lot more blasé about August Moon, or she's not into August Moon at all. So anyway, but the reason Izzy is still going to an August Moon concert and still meeting the band at the age of 17 in the film is because so as I mentioned, Solène and her ex-husband Daniel are now divorced. And Daniel in the film is definitely not as involved in Izzy's life he is in the book. So he still sees her as like that little girl that was very much into August Moon. And so he surprised her with tickets to Coachella in the film so that she could meet August Moon and do the meet and greet with them and everything. But she's doing it because her dad bought her the tickets, not necessarily because she's dying to meet this band. So yeah, so in the film, Solène meets Hayes at Coachella, but in the book, Daniel surprises Izzy with tickets to August Moon's concert in Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is one of their tour stops. So he gets them by them I mean Izzy and her friends, concert tickets and meet and greet tickets and all of that. He is unable to attend at the last minute in both the book and the film because he has to go on a work trip. So Solène ends up having to take her daughter, even though she has a weekend planned for herself. And so now she has to change her plans and take her daughter to the August Moon concert. I thought it was interesting that he bought Izzy tickets to Las Vegas. I'm probably just to continue spoiling her, I guess, but they have a stop in Los Angeles later, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe they don't. I don't know. I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. The point is, they meet at Coachella versus just a Las Vegas tour stop. So in the book, Solène meets August Moon and specifically Hayes Campbell during the meet and greet. She takes her daughter and her friends, and while they're there, Hayes very clearly starts flirting with her while she's in line with Izzy to meet the band. And so that's how they meet, and that's how they have an interaction. She mentions where she works, and that's how she mentions I'm an art gallery owner. This is the name of my art gallery based in Los Angeles, blah, blah, blah. And that's how he's able to get in touch with her later. In the film, she meets Hayes because she's in the meet and greet tent, or not the meet and greet tent. There's a VIP tent where anyone that bought these VIP tickets in Coachella, I've never been to Coachella. So if people have been to Coachella and are I already know all this. Well, this is for those of us that have never been to Coachella. Okay. So anyway, there is a VIP tent, and this is where you can watch the August Moon concert without being amongst the huge throng of August Moon fans. So Solène is in this VIP tent, and it gets a little loud because it's a lot of loud fangirls, and she has to go to the bathroom, and she exits to where she asks where's the bathroom, and she exits, and then she ends up at what she thinks is the VIP bathroom, but it turns out she has accidentally snuck into Hayes's private trailer to use the bathroom there. And yeah, that's how they meet, and that's where they have a connection, and that's where they interact. And can I just talk about how awful this Coachella security was, that she was just able to get into this man's trailer without any issues? Okay, I'm not hiring any of y'all to ever be my security in the future. That anyway, so we are getting into the age gap that made me uncomfortable versus the age gap that that didn't make me uncomfortable. And that is that Hayes is aged up in the film. Hayes is 24 years old in the film versus being 20 in the book. And yes, as I said, for me personally, 20 still falls into the barely legal category. So yeah, it just made the age gap between the two of them just made me really uncomfortable. And I think I would have, not that I would have been completely comfortable with it and okay with it and been able to move on with my life, but I might have been more I would have been more accepting of it if I had felt that the author was more accepting of it. And here's what I mean by that. So in the film, when Solène and Hayes get together for the first time, she does say I'm old enough to be your mother. So I also, point of clarification, in the book, Solène is 39 for the majority of it. She does end up turning 40 at some point in the book, but for the majority of it, she is 39. So she's 39 dating a 20-year-old. In the film, the majority of the time she's 40. So she goes to the concert, and then the next major moment we see after the concert is her 40th birthday party. So she's only 39 for 5 minutes of the film, and then the rest of the film she's 40. So she's a 40-year-old dating a 24-year-old. That's just to clarify. I mean, it's not that much of a difference, but I just, for clarity's sake, I want to point out Solen's age as well. Yeah, like I said, Hayes is 20. Like, that's just, and it, like, yes, I'm aware he's a big pop star. He's had a lot of experiences that the average 20-year-old will never have experienced, but there's still a difference. I don't know. It just makes me really uncomfortable. But in the film, when Solen and Hayes first hook up, she says, "I'm old enough to be your mother." And he says, "But you're not my mother." And at that point, she stops it and they don't continue hooking up at that point. But that's the only time their age gap is brought up amongst themselves. Like, once the relationship goes viral, obviously a lot of people have thoughts and opinions about it, and yeah, they just have a lot of thoughts and opinions about it, and their age gap relationship is brought up a lot in terms of like the way the media talks about her. She gets a lot of very sexist, a lot of ageist comments. She gets, so she does deal with a lot of negativity because of her age, because of the fact that she's dating such a younger man. And it is, like I said, people are now starting to talk about just age gap relationships in general and how inappropriate they are. But when an older man, say he's 40 and he's dating a 25-year-old, people will comment on how inappropriate that relationship is and how he's probably just dating her to like manipulate her and all of that. But I still don't feel like the man gets as much hate for dating this younger woman the way that an older woman gets for dating a younger man. So Solen does have to deal with that. But and their age gap, as I said, is brought up a lot amongst just the casual media, tabloids, social media age. Solen in the book brings it up constantly. And that's what makes it really uncomfortable. And that's what I mean when I say if the author was also comfortable with it. The author wrote Solen to be French. Her justification for making Solen of French descent, very close to her French, very in tune with her French heritage and roots and everything, is that the author's justification was that the French are a lot more comfortable with sexuality than we are here in the US, which I feel in general is true. So if that's what she was going for, and Solen was uncomfortable, but then was like, you know what, this is what I want. I don't like, screw what everyone says. I feel like she would stop bringing it up at some point. And yet it's constantly brought up, constantly. And it's like, as a reader, I was never fully able to get on board because I felt like the author through Solen was never able to get on board with this relationship. Like, in the back of my mind, I would still be uncomfortable because it's still some 39-year-old woman, about to be 40-year-old woman, dating someone who I consider to be barely legal. But I feel like I would, if it wasn't brought up so constantly, like at the back of my mind, yes, I would be uncomfortable, but I'd be like, okay, like we can move on. Like I might be able to let go of some of that uncomfortability if Solen was fully empowered in her relationship. And I feel like the author constantly bringing it up was a reminder to the readers that like, this is legal. It's okay. Like she's old enough to be his mom, but she's not. He's old enough to be making these decisions. So yeah, like if the author had mentioned it just once, the way it's mentioned in the film, and then it's never brought up amongst themselves as a couple, and instead it's just brought on by the media attention, like I said, I would still be uncomfortable, but it would have been easier for me to embrace it. And I'm not even joking when I say literally every single time they meet up, every single time they hook up, it has to be mentioned at least once. Like, gosh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm old enough to be your mother. And it's like, but you're not. Or like, it's just really, really, really uncomfortable to be reading this because it's like, you feel like it's wrong to be in this relationship. So if you feel it's wrong to be in this relationship, why should I be okay with this relationship? So that's what I mean by like, if the author fully embraced it and was like, it is what it is, I feel like me as a reader might be still uncomfortable, but it would be easier for me to embrace it. And instead of just being like, okay, making me, and now I'm really uncomfortable again, because why are you bringing it up for like the 5th time? Like, if you really feel that strongly that you're too old for him, like just break up with him, like find someone else who's young, but like, and I want to say that the author has stated that she was inspired to write this book because she was very much like, when women reach 40, they are seen as not desirable. They're seen as not sexual. Like a lot of just society in general just deems women sexually dead, sexually undesirable once they reach 40. She wanted to write a book that shows how women at that age are still very passionate and sensual and sexual, and we still have desires and all of that. And she wanted to do that by showing a younger man seeing how desirable this older woman is. That's great. I'm not opposed to that. And I know a lot of fans, like hardcore fans of the book, were really upset that they aged Hayes up by 4 years because they felt like it took away from the message. And to me, it's like, the man is still in his 20s. The man is still in his early 20s. How is him being 24 suddenly taking away from the fact that he still finds a 40-year-old woman desirable? They could have aged him up to be 30 and the message still would have been the same. I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with aging him up 4 years. Like, to me, that did make a difference. But just the biggest thing that I think the biggest reason I was so uncomfortable was just because it was brought up constantly, every single, like literally, I'm not even joking. When I say literally, I mean literally every single time they hook up, there has to be some mention of their age gap. And it's like, Solène is not as comfortable with her relationship as she wants us to believe. The author isn't as comfortable writing this age gap relationship, in my opinion, as she wants us to believe. Or else she would have just, like you said, if it has to be brought up amongst them once, maybe twice, sure. But to be brought up every single time, like, that's just... And there's also comments made by Solène throughout the book that, like, at one point she does say, I don't remember the exact wording, but there is a moment in the book where she does, one of the many times that she's mentioning their age gap. In this case, she's not mentioning it to him, but it's written from the first person point of view, so we get her thoughts. And she thinks at one point, like I said, I don't remember the exact wording, but she does say something along the lines of like, my barely legal man. So it's like, so you acknowledge he's barely legal. That's really uncomfortable. That's really gross. Like, I don't know. I don't like that. And there's also another part in the book in which she's talking about, like, she talks about his body several times, and she talks about like, oh, one day he's not going to look like this. He's going to have hair growing out of places that hair shouldn't be growing out of. And his, just talking about the things that happen to bodies naturally as we age. And I know I'm a woman. I get it. Like, women, we get comments like that all the time about just like, you're only hot when you're between this age and this age, or once you reach this, like, I get it. But it's also just like, but no, he's not going to look like that. But does that mean you're going to break up with him once he stops looking like that? Like, those comments didn't necessarily come to me as appreciating, I don't know. It just seemed kind of, I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way, the way she was describing his body at that point. And I don't know. Yes, bodies change naturally, but I don't think okay. Anyway, let's just move on. I've stuck on this a really long time. In the film, so Solène goes to Coachella. She has her 40th birthday party, and then the day after her 40th birthday party, Hayes shows up at her gallery unannounced, and that's when they begin connecting with each other. So she shows him around her art gallery. She shows him the art studio. Or some of her friends' art studios that she has access to. She shows him like different, she teaches him about art, and then they escape the paparazzi and they head back to her house. And this is the moment in which they start hooking up, but they don't follow through with anything because she's like, I'm too old for you. And then he leaves. So he shows up unannounced and they start connecting in that way. In the book, Hayes reaches out to her. So as I said, during the meet and greet, she says, I'm the owner of this gallery in LA. And so he like Googles the gallery when I believe the band has a tour stop in LA. They could be there for some other reason that I don't remember, like but I'm pretty sure it's a tour stop, which is why I was like, I wonder why the dad would buy tickets for the Las Vegas tour stop when he could just do the LA tour stop. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But so once the band is in LA, Hayes like Googles the gallery and then he reaches out to her and says, meet me. And that's how they start connecting. So he has to reach out to her first. And then he starts inviting her to like, come to my tour stop here, we're doing an album recording here, we're doing, and he starts inviting her. So in the film, like shortly after Hayes shows up unannounced at her art gallery, Izzy conveniently goes away to summer camp. And this was one of the moments where Orlando and I were like, she's 17. Why is she still going to summer camp? And then I'm pretty sure she's a camp counselor. I don't know. I've never been to sleepaway camp. I always thought like the cutoff age was like 14 or something, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I've never been to sleepaway camp, so I don't know. But yeah, that was just, again, the Izzy portrayal was just very confusing because there's also a moment in which, this is when Solène has taken Hayes back to her house after they meet after he shows up unannounced at her gallery, and she tells him the whole story of how she and Daniel ended up getting divorced. And she mentions like, oh yeah, we were on a date and he just told me in the middle of the date that he met someone else and that we were getting a divorce, and I showed up and I called off the babysitter. And I was like, why would Izzy need a babysitter if she was 14 or 13 when this happened? And I'm just saying, like, to me, I was being left alone at that age, my mom started leaving my brother and me alone with my brother's like my guardian while she was working, I don't know, 12 or something. So like by the time I was 13 and he was much older than me and he was going out with his friends, like I was able to stay alone. But so again, it was just one of those things that's like, I feel like the film doesn't know what to do with Izzy. Like they want to incorporate aspects of her 13-year-oldness from the book while also trying to make her come across as a 17-year-old. And it was just confusing. So yeah. And especially because in the book, there is a moment in which Solène has to leave Izzy for a little bit. And it's like, she's 13, I can leave her alone. So it's like, so she's being left alone at 13 in the book, which I think is completely reasonable. I'm not judging that. But she needed a sitter for Izzy when she was 13 or 14 in the film after she found out she was getting a divorce. I don't know. But anyway, like I said, there's just different aspects of Izzy that were confusing age-wise in both. And I just wanted to bring that up. But anyway, so Izzy conveniently goes away to summer camp. At one point, she calls Solène and she's like on the computer. So I'm pretty sure Izzy was going as a camp counselor, not as a camper. So, it doesn't really matter. But it was just wanted to point that out because it was one of those moments in which Orlando and I were like, how old is Izzy again? Anyway, so yes, Izzy conveniently goes away to summer camp in the film. And that is at that point where Hayes is like, come on tour with me. So she flies out to New York. That's their last stop on their US tour. So she flies out to New York. She's only planning on spending the one night with him. And then he's like, come on tour with me. And she's like, I can't go on tour with you. And he's like, yes, you can. Like, Izzy's in summer camp. And she's like, okay. And so she gets on the plane with him the next morning and they fly off to Europe. And he's a rich boy bander. So like she didn't pack enough, but he buys her everything she needs. But anyway, so yeah, Izzy conveniently goes to summer camp in the film, and that allows Solène to travel all over the place with Hayes. In the book, Izzy does end up going to summer camp eventually, but like the first several times, don't remember exactly how many times they get together before Izzy goes to summer camp and she's able to spend a little bit more time with him. But before Izzy goes to summer camp, they meet up when their schedules align. So like they do meet up in New York at one point because Izzy's going to stay with her dad while Solène goes to an auction and something art related, whether it's an art auction or an art fair, something. So she is going for work, and she already has planned this work trip, and it happens to coincide with the exact same time that August Moon is during their last stop in New York. Either that or they're recording an album. They might have been recording their album at this point. The point is they're both conveniently in New York at the same time. So that's how they hook up. When he goes to Europe, she has other work trips planned in Europe. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily in the same city. They're just in the same area. So whether that be like, I have my art fair that I'm going to, or my art whatever is on this city in Europe on this day. And it's like, well, my band's on tour on this day. It's somewhere nearby Europe. I can like fly out to meet you, or I can fly you out to meet me kind of situation. So they meet up in the book as their schedules allow. And then once Izzy goes to summer camp, then she's able to spend a little bit more time with him. But yeah, so it's not as convenient in the book as it is in the film. Like, they do have to do a little bit more fitting the puzzle pieces together and figuring out when and where they can meet up. Solène is obviously not the only person dating someone from August Moon. There's one other girl who's like in a committed relationship with one of the members, and then the other members are kind of just hooking up with random girls when and where they are. And in the film, the girls that are with the younger women that are with the members of August Moon are kind of like cold towards Solène. And in the book, they're a lot more, the one that's in a committed relationship is like very welcoming, and like they bond and they get along. They don't become like friends, but there's like no animosity between them. And it kind of felt like there was animosity between, not that she has a lot of interactions with them, but there is kind of like some animosity between her and the younger women in the film, again, just because of her age. And the one in the book is kind of just like, I don't care, date him, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I did like that in the book. I did like that aspect. The other girl in the committed relationship was like a little bit more welcoming than the ones in the film. And I do want to say that there is a moment in which, I forgot where they are, but they're somewhere in Europe, and Hayes is like, come hang out at the pool with us. And so she's like about to put on a two-piece bathing suit, and then she looks out the window and she sees the younger women in their bathing suits. And then so she gets self-conscious and she ends up putting a one piece and like a shirt over it. And it's just one of those interesting things. Like, I'm not like, being self-conscious about your body, about your appearance is something I'm sure that never truly goes away. And so I'm not saying that Solène wouldn't feel self-conscious around these women, these younger women. And I'm not saying that Anne Hathaway herself doesn't feel this way now. But at the same, like, just watching it's just one of those things that's like, I understand that this is a universal feeling and it never really goes away, and it doesn't matter what you look like you're self-conscious of your body. But like, as the audience, to see someone as beautiful as Anne Hathaway, as hot as Anne Hathaway, like the message, I don't know. I feel like there was a way in which to show that self-consciousness concerning her body, or I don't know, like maybe it would have been more effective if I don't know if Anne Hathaway has stretch marks. Sure, she does, because she has had 2 pregnancies. But I feel like, I mean, and my, like, I don't know, maybe this is something she would be self-conscious about and she would not agree to it. But what I'm trying to say is just like, it's kind of hard to kind of suspend your disbelief when you see someone who looks like Anne Hathaway, who looks like she's still so hot. Like, she's definitely one of those, like, yeah, you're in your 40s and I'm sure someone somewhere deems you as undesirable now because of your age, and purely because of your age. But I feel like the general public does not see Anne Hathaway and be like, yeah, she's undesirable now. You know what I mean? So like, what I'm trying to say is, I wonder if there was a way in which we could have highlighted her insecurity, whether it be, I don't know, maybe the girls just make a comment of like, that's a skimpy bathing suit for someone your age, or, you know, because there is also this misconception that once you reach a certain age, you can't wear certain things. So I feel like maybe that would have gotten the message across more, that like given the message that they were trying to go for, rather than having like Anne Hathaway look out the window and look at these 20-year-old women looking hot in their bikinis. And it's like, you would look just as hot as they would. And I acknowledge 40 is not old. 40 is not old, but you know, 40 is considered, like I said, the point of this book is 40 is considered old and like disgusting in this. Yeah. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, but it's just like, I feel like when you have Anne Hathaway just like feeling self-conscious supposedly by these hot younger women, and it's like, you look just as hot as they do. I don't think anyone is going to deny that. So yeah, I'm just wondering, like, knowing the girls knowing how old she is, maybe them saying like, should you be wearing that at your age, would still give that message of like, oh, I'm self-conscious now. Because just like visually looking at these like hot 20-year-old women women and looking at Anne Hathaway, this hot 40-year-old woman, it's like, you don't even be self-conscious. Like, you look just as hot as them. So anyway, just had to say that. Okay. So Daniel in the book is just a lot more supportive, I should say. Like, it's his relationship with Selene is still kind of awkward. There's still exes and all of that, but it's a lot more amicable than it is in the film. And I kind of wish that they had kept that amicableness, just because Daniel in the film comes off as, this is one way that they added conflict, and I always talk about conflict and how important that is, but I mean, there's enough conflict with like the age gap and everything, so it wasn't really necessary. And if there was other ways to add the conflict between her and Daniel, and I feel like her having to interact with his hot new girl, because that's the other thing, Daniel leaves Selene for a hot younger woman, or a younger woman. It's not necessarily specified that it's hot, but that's kind of what's implied, since, she's 40 now. Anyway, Daniel in the film comes across as very controlling still, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily. There are exes that are still that still want to be controlling of their ex and what they're doing and all that. So I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I just don't think it was necessary. But I mean, so like in the book, it's a lot more, Daniel is a lot more concerned about her relationship with Hayes because of the implications it has for Izzy, while the movie Daniel is a lot more concerned with her relationship with Hayes because he just doesn't want his ex dating someone at all, it seems. So yeah, I kind of wish, like, that right there's enough conflict, is him fighting the relationship because of what it means for Izzy. And maybe that's not something to worry about, since Izzy's doesn't care for August Moon in the film, but I don't know, that's still something to worry about. But speaking of Izzy, she's absolutely heartbroken in the film. I mean, in the book. In the film, she is upset that her mom is dating Hayes, but more so because her mom lied to her and kept it a secret, as opposed to Izzy in the book, who's 13, a huge August Moon fan, has the biggest crush, not on Hayes, like, you always have your favorite boy band member, and while it's not Hayes, like, it's still like, you can't date my favorite boy, like, one of my favorite boy band members, like, that's so Izzy takes it a lot more personal in the book, which is makes sense at that age. Like, it hurts. And it's also just weird because it's like, you're dating someone that my friends find really hot. And I'm not, obviously you can acknowledge when someone is as the mom, she can acknowledge that's a good looking guy, but it's still he's mine generation, not your generation. You need to be dating someone your age. So yeah, so Izzy in the film, she's upset that she was lied to. She's upset that her mom felt like she had to keep this a secret. But once the secret comes out, Izzy's like, you have my blessing, just date him. It's fine. It's a little weird, but it's fine. And Izzy in the book, she takes it so personal. It's so devastating for her. She stops talking to her mom for a while, and she stays with her dad for as long as she can, but her dad goes on business trips a lot, so eventually she does have to come back to her mom. And yeah, so it's a lot more heartbreaking for Izzy, and she takes it very, very hard. And then the last big thing that I want to talk about is the ending of the book, which fans of the book hated this ending. They absolutely hated it. And so the film tried to rectify that by making a change, and a major change. And that is that Hayes and Selene break up permanently in the book. It reaches a point in which Izzy starts getting bullied at school, which happens in the film as well. But it's just as devastating, honestly, and the way because she's starting to get comments like a guy she has a crush on in both the book and the film approach her at one point, and she's really excited because she really likes this guy, and then the guy's like, so I just turned 18, do you think your mom wants to date me now? Comments like that. So Izzy is absolutely heartbroken, and she's been dealing with a lot of bullying like that. And so Selene decides this is having too much of a ramification on my daughter's life, so I need to end it. And in the book, it's permanent. like she cuts off all communication with him. Hayes tries to leave the band and stay with her and get her to stay with him. She's like, nope, I never really loved you. She like pushes him away. She's like, I was in love with the idea of you. That's where the title of the book comes from. And she like cuts off all communication with him. He rejoins the band and he tries to reach out to her several times. And then eventually he just stops trying to reach out to her. In the film, she breaks up with him and Hayes is like, let's check back in 5 years. And she's like, you're not going to want me in 5 years. And he's like, well, if I do, let's check back in 5 years. And he's like, well, I made it sound rude, but he's like, no, I will. And Izzy will be in college, so it'll be fine. Like, we can get back together at that point. And then 5 years pass. Izzy is now at school in Chicago studying something. I don't know what. I don't think it said. And then Hayes shows up at her gallery and he's like, all right, let's pick up where we left off. And they get together. And at this point, he is 29 and she is 45. So still have that age gap. She's still desirable to him 5 years later. So again, the message is not diluted just because he is now nearly 30 and she's 45. Like, that is, nope. I hate that the argument is that it deletes the message of the book by having aged him up. Aging him up 4 years does not dilute the message of the book or what the author was trying to go for. It just doesn't. Gosh, okay. So yeah, that was really irritating. Okay, so those were the major differences. Just some other things that I just feel like talking about, and that is like, I was kind of confused. Like, August Moon in the book is very much based off of One Direction. And like, when you first see August Moon in the film, like, they're very British. Again, it's very obvious that this is based off of One Direction. And then you see them perform at Coachella, and it's like, that is not what a British boy band sounds like. It seemed more like they were trying to capitalize off of the K-pop trend, because they came off more as like the dance and the music style that we were seeing on screen screamed more K-pop but sung in English as opposed to British boy band. And there is a difference. Like, obvious, like, I don't listen to a lot of K-pop, but I can tell the difference between One Direction and BTS, and it's not just because BTS sings in Korean. Like, the sounds, K-pop sounds and just like boy band sounds are very different. Like, they're very distinct. If you don't listen to boy bands in general, you may not be able to tell the difference between 98 Degrees and One Direction and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. And that's just in general. Like, if you don't listen to any of them in general and I play you them, you may not be able to tell the difference between who's who sound wise. If you know who they are, you can pick up on like the differences. But the point I'm trying to make is that boy bands in general have a very distinct sound, and K-pop in general has a very distinct sound. So even like if I play you all those boy bands and I play you BTS and I find like an all English BTS song, I don't know if that exists, but I'm just saying, you can definitely tell like BTS is not like the other boy bands I just played you. So yeah, that was a little confusing because it's just like, this is very clearly based off of One Direction, but it seems like you're trying to capitalize off of K-pop by making this. And it's like, I think like the target demographic for this film, which is more than likely 40-year-old women, millennials. Gosh, okay, millennials. We can tell the difference. And so it's like, I don't think you need to try to capitalize off of K-pop. And I'm not saying there aren't millennials. Oh gosh, I feel so old. Okay, but I'm not saying that there aren't millennials that aren't into K-pop, but it's just like, when I look on stage at August Moon, I'm expecting One Direction, not BTS. So that was a little, like, both Orlando and I were like, okay, that's not what I expected this band to sound like. It's like, yeah, because they were going more for K-pop for whatever reason. A huge issue with the film is that so many of the characters, well, I guess not so many, but like there's not that many characters of color in the book to begin with, but the ones that are there are 3 that are clearly named that are like pretty important to the story. And that's Lulit, who is Solen's best friend / co-gallery owner. Rose or Georgia, I don't remember which one, but one of those. It's either Rose or Rose and Georgia are Izzy's friends, and one of those is Black. And then the Lula is also Black. She's Ethiopian. And then, like I said, Rose or Georgia is also Black. And then Ava, who is Daniel's new girlfriend, fiance, wife, whatever she is, she's half Chinese. So those are like the three major characters that are definitely supposed to be of color, and they were whitewashed except for Rose, or I guess it was supposed to be Rose because there is a Georgia in the film, but they replaced Rose with Zeke, and Zeke is played by a Black man. So yeah, it just sucks that like the author is a Black woman, and so it just sucks that all the characters she wrote or she specified, and mind you, she only specified those three that I can remember as being specifically characters of color, and so it just sucks that all of them minus one were whitewashed. Like, what's wrong with leaving her, especially because this was produced by Gabrielle Union, and I'm not blaming Gabrielle Union. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes you have to whitewash the characters in order to get a project greenlit. And it seems like that could have been the case with this film, but it just really sucks. It's like we could have kept our half Chinese new wife and her Black best friend. Like we could have left those in. Why did we need to whitewash them? That's also disappointing. But yeah, so I feel like there was something else just other things, and yeah, there's just moments. Okay, I don't have a problem with smut in general. Like when you're reading a romance book, you know you're gonna get smut unless it's a clean romance. But I don't know. There was one other passage that I was just like, you didn't need to mention that. And it's at one, like, Hayes at one, like when Hayes and Solen in the book first start hooking up, they use condoms. And then Hayes finds out that she's on birth control. And he's like, so I don't need to use condoms. And she's like, you do need to use condoms because I don't know if you're sleeping with like at this point, I don't know if we're exclusive. So I don't know if you're sleeping with other women on the side. So no, when you're with me, at least you got to use a condom because I'm not about to get an STD from you. And then eventually he's like, I'm not sleeping with anyone else. I haven't slept with anyone else in a long time because I just want to be with you. Let's become exclusive. And then at that point, she says, okay, with not using condoms anymore. But there's this moment, Izzy is not aware of the relationship at this point, and Solen is trying to work up the courage to tell Izzy. And then, so she ends up saying, Hayes Campbell from August Moon, like, he's my client. And Izzy's like, wow, that's awesome. And there's a line, again, I don't remember the exact line, but Solen says something along the lines of like, he's still swimming inside me and I just lied to my child. And I was like, we literally just read the moment before when you had sex with Hayes. Did you really need to mention that his little swimmers are still swimming around inside when you're lying to your daughter? Like, we know you just saw him. We know you just slept with him. Like, I don't think you need to talk about the fact that he's still swimming around inside you when you're talking to your daughter. Like, yeah, this Robinne Lee, the author, has stated that Hayes is an amalgamation of different boy band or just celebrities that she's had a crush on throughout the years. And so it's not meant to be based off anyone specifically. She has stated that. But when the film first came out, people were calling it Harry Styles fan fiction, and a lot of not official, like no one tied to the film officially was calling it Harry Styles fan fiction. What I remember is that when this film first came out, I heard it referred to as Harry Styles fan fiction in different publications by different online forums and things like that. And there was a lot of backlash towards this film for that reason, because of the after films, which is like that one is Harry Styles fan fiction. And Harry Styles has talked about how that series makes him feel. Another reason to hate the After series. Can't stop dunking on After. So there was a lot of backlash towards this film when it first premiered, from what I remember, because everyone was like, Harry Styles has said he's uncomfortable with like fan fictions about him getting turned into books and movies, and we need to like stop with like the Harry Styles fan fiction, and just like we need to acknowledge how uncomfortable it makes him. Like, he's still a person, he's still a human being, he doesn't like like being objectified, all that stuff. And that's when the author came out and said, this was not a Harry Styles fan fiction. This is based on a ton of different people that I have had a crush on. And at the time I was like, is that real, or is that just damage control at this point, just to like save face? Because Orlando had never heard of this film, so he wasn't aware of like all the discourse around it. And the moment Hayes Campbell was introduced, he was like, is that supposed to be Harry Styles? So like he picked up on that. And reading the book, I felt like it was pure Harry Styles. Like the way he's described, like physically, the outfits he wears, it just felt very Harry Styles to me. But Robinne Lee has been saying since the book was published that it's not meant to be Harry Styles specifically. It has always been an amalgamation of different boy banders that she's found attractive. So I'm sure Harry Styles had to have been one of the inspirations, but I do want to say that she has been saying that since she was interviewed when the book was first published in 2017. But it does still come off as very Harry Styles to me, just reading it. Anyway, so I did not like this book. Is it because of the age gap? Probably. I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, it just made me, the way that Hayes was talked about just made me really uncomfortable. The way the age gap was talked about made me really uncomfortable. If someone I knew and loved came up to me at the age of 24 and was like, I'm dating a 40-year-old, would I be okay with it the way I was watching this film? Probably not, but I'm also just, I'm protective of that person. If it's like a random celebrity dating another random celebrity and that's their age gap, probably wouldn't care. But also, I think made a huge difference. Like, I don't think I would have been okay with the age gap in the film if it was as much of a talking point between Hayes and Solène the way it is in the book. It's just, how can I be on board with it if Solène and the author are not on board with it? Like, you can't convince me that they were, or else they wouldn't feel a need to bring it up every time. And I'm not saying that like people in age gap relationships don't have moments in which they're like, you're showing your age, or wow, I really have lived so much longer than you have at this point in time, or wow, I forgot that I was alive during this and you were maybe just being born, or you were like 2 or 3 and you have no way of remembering. Like, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen in age gap relationships, but I also feel like it's not a talking, like I'm thinking about my friends who have been in one or who are currently in one, and it's like, it's not a talking point for them, you know? It's as normal to them as my 2.5-year age difference between Orlando. It's not a talking point between us. And even like between me and Orlando, we're only 2.5-year age difference, but he'll be like, wow, that song came out when I was in middle school. And I'll say like, that song came out when I was in elementary school. And that makes him feel old. So like, I feel like there's going to be moments like that in any relationship in which, you know, sometimes 2 years can make all the difference. And sometimes it doesn't make a difference at all in certain things that we've grown up and experienced. So I feel like there's always going to be moments in which the person who's older in a relationship is going to be like, oh, wow, okay, you just made me feel old there or whatever, unintentionally. But it's not a talking point, you know? And to, like I said, to my friends who are in age gap relationships or who were in age gap relationships, like it's not, like I said, it's normal to them. It's not something that, so that's what I mean. Like the author and Solène were not comfortable with the age gap relationship. So why should I feel comfortable with the age gap relationship? So that was my main issue with the book. There was also this moment in the film in the book in which Hayes constantly talks about Solène's mouth, and he always talks about like the first time he met her, he wanted her to use her mouth on him. There's this point in which Hayes meets Izzy. Izzy officially knows that they're dating, that Hayes and Solène are dating. It's fine. So he's finally allowed to like start developing a relationship with Izzy as her mother's boyfriend. And she's wearing braces. And then at one point she gets her braces removed, and he talks to her. And after he talks to her, he turns to Solène and he's like, wow, that's your mouth. And I'm just like, oh no, baby, no. Do not talk about a 14-year-old girl's mouth that way. Like, and it's meant to be awkward because Solène and Hayes have an awkward moment after he has that comment. And it's like, don't say that, especially when you only ever say sexual things about your girlfriend's mouth. I understand, like, yes, daughters or children in general can look like their parents, and sometimes they're spitting images of their parents. But that doesn't mean, you know what, like, that was just so uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable in the book as well, between Solon and Hayes after he says that. And it's just like, was that, like, there's just moments like that that are written that I'm like, did you need to say that? Did that need to be said? I don't think so. Like, this, you didn't need to say that. You could have kept that to yourself. Like, it's just, there's also a moment in which Hayes, you know, he's pushing for her to be honest with her daughter and tell her that they're dating. And then she finally tells him, and then he can't deal with the responsibility that comes with her being a mother. Like, when she's hiding the relationship, it's nice and fine and dandy because she's sneaking off to see him when she can. And so he doesn't need to worry about Izzy. She has to cancel on him once because she, like, at the last second, Izzy's not able to go with her dad, and so she has to cancel on him, and he gets really upset, and he's just like, I can't believe you're canceling on me. And it's just like, she's a mother. Like, you have to understand that her child has to come before you. Like, she has to put her child first. So yeah, and it was just really, so that was like, and like, that was moments in which I felt like Hayes showed his age, which I was like, okay, whatever. But it was just like, I don't know, it was just, but anyway, later on, like, he's having a hard time adjusting to the fact that, like, oh, now I have to officially share my girlfriend with her daughter. And so he pays one of his bandmates to, like, take Izzy and her friend, because this is, Solène goes to visit him in New York, and he's like, bring your daughter with, like, she'll have a heart, like, she'll have a fun time hanging out backstage and whatever, like, she'll have a blast hanging out with the band because she loves us or whatever. And at one point he pays his band member to, like, take her daughter and her friend with him on an errand he's running, and she's hesitant at first, and then, like, the security guard is like, I'll be with them too the whole time, and she's like, okay. And then it's also Hayes can have sex with her, and then but it's still like, you don't know that other, you know Hayes, but you don't know that other band member. And, like, yes, you've interacted with the security guard, but you're also sending your daughter, your minor daughter and her minor friend, to hang out with these adult men that you don't really know. And she makes that realization later on when she's at this point, like, Izzy knows, but Izzy's back home with her dad, and Solène is with Hayes somewhere. And she hears knocking on the whatever band member is staying across the hall from her and Hayes. She hears knocking, and, like, someone really distressed. And so she goes, and this girl is, like, admits that she's 16 and that she had hooked up with whichever band member, and now he wasn't, like, letting her in his room. And Solène's maternal instinct kicks in, and that's when she's like, how well do I really know these boys? And it's like, you don't know these boys. So why are you letting your daughter go off with them by herself? Because the security guard said he'd be with, I don't know. I just had a lot of issues with the book. I had a lot of issues with how it was written in general. And I did not enjoy the book. I rated the book 2 stars. I rated the film 3 stars. So the winner is the movie. Yeah, you can, I didn't like, now I'm aware this book has a very, very passionate fan base, so you may like it. I did not like it. I had a lot of issues with it. I had a lot of issues with the way the age gap was talked about, as I've said. I had issues with just Solène in the book. I feel like Solène in the film was a lot more grounded, is how I want to say it. She was just a lot more aware of the dangers, and yeah, I hated the book. I'm gonna be honest, I hated it. I don't recommend it. You can check it out if you want and see what, this was even one of Goodreads nominees for debut novel in 2017. I don't know why. I would not have nominated this. It's not good. It's not good. I didn't think it was good. But clearly it has a fan base. There's a lot of people who were very upset at the changes that were made in the film. The only change that people seem to like is the ending, because they actually end up together. But no, aging him up does not take away the story, does not take away from the story. I do agree with one change another change that a lot of people were upset about, and that is that Solène is in the book, she owns the art gallery, and she lives like in a very nice, like she and Daniel are both wealthy in their own right. In the film, Daniel's the wealthy one, and while she's not like living on the poverty line or anything, her house isn't as nice. It's in the book, she has like a big house by the beach, or overlooking the beach, I should say. And in the film, it's like in a humble neighborhood, and it's a humble house. And so a lot of people were like, she deserves to have as much wealth as Daniel outside of their divorce, and it also took away from like, yeah. So, I mean, I do agree with that. I wish that that would have been a cool change to see Solène be more financially, not that she's like insecure, but she's not as secure in the film as she is in the book. So that change, sure, I can see why people were upset about it. Not a deal breaker for me, but you can, in my opinion, you can skip the book. No, you can skip the book. Just watch the film. The film isn't like a masterpiece by any means, but it's better than the book. So that is it for this episode of Books versus Movies. If you liked what you heard, please tune in next time and leave it a rating and a review, and I'll see you. Bye.